Well, welcome to Fire Your Boss Fridays. I'm your host, Chad, joined by the ever insightful Lisa. She's my ride or die partner in this journey of liberation to steal your life back, fire your boss, and live a life full of purpose. Today, we are thrilled to have Jeff Barnes with us, a man who not just fired his boss, but has helped others create a life of purpose and autonomy as well. Jeff is a former Marine, U.S. nuclear power plant operator turned Navy. Is that
Navy
right?
Submariner, yeah.
Okay. And you turned business growth maestro, or I don't want to use guru. I thought maestro sounded cooler. I feel Jeff embodies one of my mantras. This guy is living like he stole it, man. He is just putting it together. So buckle up, listeners. We're going to dive into a conversation with this man, and it's going to be all about season control and living your life of purpose, putting a business together and expanding on that, and serving your community with passion. Let's give the rebel yell here to Jeff, and he's going to shoot back at you. Say hi to our listeners, Jeff.
Hey, everyone.
And tell us how you found yourself on Fire Your Boss Fridays, man. It's all you.
Awesome. I appreciate that, Chad. Thanks for the intro. Welcome, everyone. So happy to be here. Honored to be on the podcast. And yeah, looking forward to talking about that. Firing your boss, man. It took me a long time for me to do that the right way, I should say. But happy to talk all about that in my journey.
Cool. Yeah. Like, it's really an interesting energy, right? Like when we first kind of developed that, kind of topic, we're like, listen, this is a topic people can really get behind, right? And there's always some story that's attached to that moment, and not just like the story I see on that Walmart video where the cashier stands on the cashier and is, profanities at their boss, and there's this whole like moment where they quit Walmart and it's this big moment. But this is bigger because when you become an entrepreneur, it's not about just quitting one thing and starting another. I mean, you're really making a transformation. So let's call this the great escape, my friend. Jeff, you've navigated from the structured world of the Navy, okay, to a dynamic realm of entrepreneurship, right? So how did you and you touched on this just for a sec, so let's jump right into it. How did you steal your life back from those traditional expectations, and what was that moment that propelled you, like that really was the catalyst, right? Some people have a divorce, something happened to you, right? So to get the true freedom of an entrepreneur, walk us through that.
Yeah, well, it's a long journey, I'll say, for myself, because I read Rich Dad Poor Dad in 2003 when I was 21 years old. I was hungover after my 21st birthday, I remember, and had seen this infomercial about, no money down real estate. And I thought, oh, that's my ticket out. I'm going to buy a whole bunch of real estate. So when I get out of the Navy, I'm going to be retired and passive income for life. Well, long story short, that didn't happen. I did buy a property that ended up losing me a whole bunch of money over the years during the financial crisis and whatnot. And I was not that traditional entrepreneur that's like, yeah, I'm going to go out there and run my own business. I had no idea what I wanted to do. That's why I joined the Navy in the first place. And when you're in the military, your life is structured, and you know where you need to be, when you need to be, what you need to be, who's reporting to you and who you're reporting to and what the expectations are all the time. And you live at work when you're on a submarine, right? So you don't even get a chance to go home or even see daylight.
Right. Yeah.
So
that's a way different scenario.
Yeah. So when I got out of the Navy back in 2006, I said, I'm going to take 2 months off and just figure out what I want to do. Like, I'm not going to do anything. And I thought that would be a great way for me to transition out of the military into the civilian world and figure out what I wanted. And I got so bored that 2 weeks later I had a job. I got approached by a company that my friend worked for, and he was telling me all about it. It was such a great job. And sure enough, I took the job. I was making about the same as what I was in the military, which turns out is actually a lot less when you get taxed on all of it, not just parts of it. So that was kind of a rude awakening. But I had a job where I worked from home. I had my own company car. I had a laptop lifestyle, so to speak. I traveled regularly. I'd see my boss in the early days once a month. By the time I left that company 12 years later, I was seeing my boss once, twice a year. And I had a really great run at that company. And so from the outside looking in, everybody like, why would you ever leave this company? You had, like I said, I've been working from home for 17 years now. I haven't had to worry about going into an office, or I did deal with, commutes because I was going from location to location, checking out businesses, but I didn't have to worry about rush hour traffic. Really. I didn't have to worry about, the drive going into the office and parking the same place. I because I knew that would kill me, right? The office space kind of idea of having the same cubicle day in and day out, I could not handle that. So at least I knew that part about myself. So I went from this really structured regimen in the military to a completely different style
Oh
of,
yeah,
of,
that's a
of work
night
and
and
living.
day.
Yeah, so that kind of set the stage for me. But then I did have all this autonomy in my job, and so I wasn't, even though I was very entrepreneurial at the time, and I wanted to have this amazing lifestyle. I wanted to be the guy that bought the real estate and was able to leave because he had all this passive income and everything was figured. It took me forever.
It's like the dream, right? It seems it's beyond you.
Yeah.
You're like, well, how do I get there? Yeah.
Oh man, constantly banging my head against the wall. I tested out of college essentially, and I got my undergrad degree, and then I went and I got my MBA, and I'm thinking, I'm too smart for all this. Why is this so hard for me? And along the way, people were hiring me to do consulting jobs for them because I understood business, and I started getting into finance. I started understanding that, so I was doing stuff outside of my normal job. But the thing is, I never figured out how to turn that into a business. It took me so long. And I'd gotten married back in '07, and my ex was a chiropractor. And so it was like years and years of me pushing. It's like, me, I don't know what I'm going to sell. I don't know what Jeff Barnes is going to sell. And, if you can't figure
Mm-hmm.
that out, it's really hard to start a
What's your
business, right?
product going to be? Yeah. What are you going to monetize?
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Yeah, the word monetizing everything it was all over the place. It was the rage of everything, right? I think JP Sears had done a little skit about that like 10 years ago, talking about how if we can't figure out how to monetize it, we're just not going to do
Mm-hmm.
it, right?
Yeah, if you haven't seen it, listeners, go find that one. If you're thinking about being an entrepreneur, this guy pokes at all those little nuances, and it'll give you a good perspective of how the world's going to see you.
Oh man.
Because and it's not bad, but you could definitely attach yourself to that video. But I'm glad you brought that up, Jeff. So
Yeah,
yeah.
absolutely. But I was going through this whole journey and just kept thinking, I'm too smart for this. I tried one thing, it worked a little bit, then it stopped working. I tried this other thing, it worked a little bit, then it stopped working. And so I got with my then wife and I said, listen, you're working 50, 60 hours a week, making 3,500 bucks a month working for somebody else. Let's start your own practice. And so we kind of
Mm-hmm.
tiptoed into that. But that was my first foray into starting a real business, right? Not just a
Mm-hmm.
solopreneur going to go out there and try and coach or consult or whatever, like an actual real business with a lease and a building, and we had to do all the
Mm-hmm.
construction. We had to get,
Risky move.
yeah,
Yeah.
100%, right? But we took that company, and within 3 years, it was doing seven figures, right? And I
Dang.
was the person that was doing all the management. I wasn't doing the doctor stuff, even though I learned how to start taking X-rays and writing chart notes and all that fun stuff. But we took that and we actually scaled that up. And for me, it was like, okay, cool. I actually do know a little something of what I'm doing here, right? I learned marketing, I learned
You
advertising and
validated.
sales and all
Yeah.
that. And so I said, okay, cool. Now I want to take everything that I've been doing, because in my professional career along the way, I still had a job, and I was working in corporate venture capital. I was working with private equity. I was working in finance. I was working with technology startups and bringing these companies into our big business and then scaling them up. And so, all right, now
Mm-hmm.
it's time for me to finally chase my dream. Right? She's got her business. It's stable. We're making money. Great. Now I can leave without putting the entire family at risk. Right? Because by this point we had the mortgage, we had the two kids, we had the dog, we had the white picket lifestyle. Right? And that's not cheap. And if you start you go to become an entrepreneur and
You're probably, I'm going to guess, dude, see how well I do. 40K a month out the door, even if you're just sitting on the couch.
oh man, it was one of those situations. Yeah, we were probably, our burn at that point was roughly around 30K a month that we were
Yeah.
doing. Yeah.
I did pretty good. Yeah. It
Yeah.
just like you could just sit there and just do almost nothing new and just keeps dropping out the door.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so I was like, okay, if you're going to do that when you're in your 30s, right? And you already have all these obligations, you can't just like give it up and leave and hope that it all works out, right? Like you don't really have that luxury anymore. You actually have responsibilities and people waiting on you and expecting things from you. So when we got to that point, it's like, great, it's time for me to leave. And I'll never forget it. It was October of 2018. At that point, I'd already been working in Angel Investors Network and had gotten an opportunity to take over the company, essentially buy it out. And I did that. And I was like, all right, we're gonna figure this business out. We're gonna scale this thing up. And it's gonna be great. And December of 2018, we decided to get a divorce. So all
Wow.
those hopes and dreams of me not having to worry about the income
Culminated. Yeah.
was like gone almost overnight. I was like, oh man, now what I'm going to do, right?
Because
And
you guys had a plan, like every couple does. Usually has some life goals and plans, and those started to dissipate. Man, that's
oh,
rough.
yeah, it fell, the bottom fell out from underneath me like overnight. And it wasn't even, looking back on it, it's not like it was unexpected. Should have seen this coming from probably years in advance if I'd have been really in tune, privy to that. But it's one of those things you just kind of bury your head in the sand and you're optimistic and you're like, I'm just going to push forward. And if we figure this thing out over here, everything else will fall into place, right? That really naive concept that it's just one building block of the entire building that's causing you problems. And the stress of me having a job and helping her with her business was what I thought was the issue. And of course, that's not really what it was, but that's what it felt like, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, now I'm in the situation where I now have a business that was kind of limping along and doing okay, but it wasn't great. But I just left a really comfy 6-figure job with all the benefits and all the, accoutrement there, right? And also left this other, business that was funding our lifestyle, and I had to go back to the drawing board and figure it all out.
This is the catalyst we've all been waiting for,
Yeah,
the moment that
and it was just
Jeff
like,
like has to put it all back together. It's awesome. Thanks for sharing, brother. Keep going, brother.
yeah,
Sorry.
absolutely.
I'm on the edge of my seat, man.
And the thing is that, you think when you think you start getting something figured out and you start getting a little bit too comfortable, that's when you really should be worried, right? And that's what happened to me. Everything kind of fell apart, and it's like, okay, now what am I going to do? How am I going to do this? Now I have Angel Investors Network. Cool. How do we make money? And the company had been around for at that point, about 22, 23 years. So it's not like we didn't have a brand and we didn't have a business and we had a business model, but it wasn't a scalable model. And for me, I'd worked in a multi-billion-dollar conglomerate, and I'd seen checks of $50 million, $100 million written left and right. So I don't think small. I was like, okay, how are we going to take this thing big? Let's go really big with this thing. And we
Mm-hmm.
came up with our model and we said, all right, now what we got to do is we got to go out there and find these companies that need help raising capital and put these events together and get equity in the companies and help along that process. And anybody that's raised capital understands the difficulty of going down that process, right? Like that, any company that raises capital, it's a slog, it's a lot of work. And here I was thinking they were going to pay me to help them do that. Well, when you're raising capital, most of the time you're broke, right? That's why you need to raise capital. If you weren't, if you already had the money, well, why would you go raise the money, right? So what we ended up doing was digging ourselves into this hole of working with a lot of entrepreneurs that were just not ready for our help. And I was not
Mm.
used to that because the companies I was working with before were companies that were funded with generally their Series A, right? So they received a $5 million to $20 million check. So they had the cash to spend. But we were targeting those companies that were like their seed round and pre-Series A and just didn't have any money yet. And so 2019 became a bit of an issue with Angel Investors Network. I was like, okay, we still hadn't quite grown up and figured out who we wanted to be. Along the way, though, people had learned kind of my skill set of managing teams and operations. And so we actually went in and started doing some e-commerce businesses and started doing drop shipping. And in November of 2018, we kicked off this drop shipping deal. And by July of 2019, we've made $17 million. So I was
What?
able to take this idea of, the operations, logistics, e-commerce, direct response marketing, all of that, and our team put together just an incredible runway of making money. And it was a lot of fun, right?
Mm-hmm.
Unfortunately, I was still going through the divorce. And so I was at the bus stop at the apartment building, where I'm, living in this apartment. I'm on the phone talking to American Express and Chase because we're wiring like $100,000 a day back and forth to cover the ad spend and things like that. And, that was a lot of fun. It was surreal. I look back on that now. I'm like, oh man, that was incredible. That was a lot of fun doing all that. Wish it would have continued. But unfortunately, like most entrepreneurial journeys, there's the peaks and then there's the valleys. And I'd already gone through a
Mm-hmm.
couple peaks and valleys at this point, and this valley hit hard. By July of 2019, we had 400,000 customers, and we were, blowing and going, literally spending $150,000 a day on advertising. And if you don't spend money on advertising to get the traffic, you're never going to get the sales, right? So the trick is to
Mm-hmm.
do it profitably. That's what we needed to figure out. And we actually got really good at selling $30 to $50 products profitably online. And everything was amazing. However, we were so good at the marketing side of things, we didn't stop to take a health check with the manufacturers that we were working with. And it turns out that we outsold their capacity, and they didn't tell us. So we had no idea.
And there was no
Oh, wow.
deliverables. Wow.
It was a nightmare. I guess I remember if you start feeling like you're getting comfortable in your job, then that's when you start worrying. We were getting comfortable, about to hit $3 million a month in revenue, and we were just scaling every single month. And we thought it was great. And customer service issues were kind of coming up here and there, but it was like, yeah, we got that handled. And then all of a sudden, we start getting refund requests and start getting nasty emails back from customers. And this is all over the world. It's not here in the States, but this is all over the world. And so we actually had to get translators for each of our customer service things. And it turns out that people were receiving empty boxes from
Oh
the
my
warehouse.
gosh.
Oh my God.
So I'm
Yeah, that'll spark up a few nasty emails, my
oh my
friend.
god,
Well, some people might be concerned, like, well, hey, maybe it was a mistake. I think the box showed up. There's nothing in there. But then, there's people that they'll take
oh
that to the
man,
next
yeah,
level. So,
and it's not fun either, right? When you're trying to be this person of integrity and trying
mm-hmm.
to run a business the right way, and you're paying all your vendors, you're paying your taxes, you're getting everything taken care of, and you're still profitable. You're like feeling really good about yourself, only to find that somebody that you were really relying on to do their job did not do it, and you didn't have a checks and balances in place to make sure they did their job. We ended
Mm-hmm.
up having over 50,000 refunds. We did
Oh,
not have a very good July, August, September. The rest of
Mm.
2019 was just a mess. It was an absolute mess. So, needless to say, that business closed down. The the thing that people, I think, if you're getting into business, you need to understand a lot of quote unquote gurus will talk about how easy it is once they're there, right? And they talk about, okay, if you just get the right person, the right seat on the bus, you'll be fine and everything will grow.
Right.
The problem with being an entrepreneur is you don't know who those right people are, and you don't even know what seats on the bus you need half the time. And so, one thing,
Yeah, unless you've been there before. Yeah.
unless you've
Mm-hmm.
been there, right? And man, we learned the hard way some really, really important things, which is that the credit card companies, the payment processing companies, the merchant accounts, the the AFACs that you go through, all these different things that are tied to you financially. When you start getting sort of blacklisted, if you will, because you have a bad rating, this is not like a Equifax, Experian, your credit report kind of rating. This is they have their own internal risk management rating system for how well you do, number of chargebacks, number of refunds, number of complaints, things like that. When those happen, they shut you down.
Yep.
right.
There's
And
no way for you to get digital currency across the board from customer to company. It's not going to happen.
yeah, and when you lose your ability to charge customers, it's not like you just go open up another bank account and none of them
No.
talk to each other and you can just get a new account. Like, no, when Stripe shuts you down, Stripe shuts you down. When PayPal shuts you down, they shut you down. And when that happens, and you're also getting complaints on social media, your ad accounts get shut down and your business management accounts I lost my entire Facebook account over this and other related issues. But we went from the ability to sell almost $3 million in 1 month to within 45 days being completely out of business with no ability to get back into business.
Wow.
And
Part of me says that's not fair. And part of me says, like, how does one prepare for anything like this, right? Like, there's like two questions in my mind, right? Like, this is a big moment, right? You can't take full responsibility for this, Jeff, because, like, not everything is within an entrepreneur's control, for one, right? And I'm not going to make excuses, but I knew you were trying to be humble here and say, like, yeah, you probably could have done a billion things differently, right? But it's always the thing, right? You try to hindsight's 2020. In this case, though, how does one come back from that? Like, how do you recover from? I mean, that's rock bottom, dude. Like, that's jump off a bridge entrepreneur stuff, right? I'm not kidding.
yeah,
Like, that's the moment where the entrepreneur looks at his family, and he's gonna have to go home and tell them all this is going away,
yeah.
and they just can't do it, right? So for you, dude, thanks for sharing this story, by the way, and I'm so happy you're still sitting here with us. But so how do you recover from that, man? I've got to hear it.
You know, the only answer I can give for something like that is that what's your other choice, right? What's the option you have? I had kids. I had children to take care of. I have little boys who look up to me, and I could say, I'm doing this as a role model for them, and maybe partially that's true, but in reality, it's like, no, I want to be a dad. I want to be able to be there for them, and so I'm
Mm-hmm.
doing it because not because I want to be a role model, but because I want to be in their lives. And there's you learn grit, in one way or another, if you're an entrepreneur. Luckily,
Mm-hmm.
I'd been in the military and I'd done some really difficult things in the military. And so, in the military, there were actually a couple times where I almost died. And when you go through stuff like that, it changes your perspective on things, right? And
Mm-hmm.
so, yeah, this was absolutely terrible. It was miserable. It was gut wrenching, heartbreaking, all the euphemisms, analogies you can possibly think of, right? But at the end of the day, I was still alive. I still had all my faculties.
Amen.
I had
Amen, brother.
I had my education. I had my knowledge. And now
And you had your family.
I had my family, and I had more
Mm-hmm.
experience than you can shake a stick at this point, right? So for me, it was like, you look yourself in the mirror and you go, "What's it going to be today, Jeff? Are you going to sit in bed and cry about this and hope for somebody else to come save you, or are you going to get back on the horse and do it again and figure out this time what it takes to be successful and learn from your lessons, right?"
You're right. And then this is where it transforms for you, my friend, into what you're doing today.
Mm-hmm.
Is that correct?
Oh, 100%.
Right?
100%.
And so how do you okay, so now that you've been through that, do you and you can kind of see these red flags and that kind of thing. What is it you're doing for entrepreneurs now that you have a specialty, right? Like you've decided that you're going to be the best at this particular thing. Walk us through that right now. Like how who are you helping? How are you helping?
Yeah, that's a great question. I appreciate that. So when there's all these stages of entrepreneurship, right? And the folks that I can't help and I don't help are the ones that are still trying to figure out what their business is, what their product is, what their service is. There's so many other people that can help with that, and probably better than I can, because I'm not the innovator, or I shouldn't say I'm not the inventor. I'm very
Mm-hmm.
innovative, but I'm not the person who's going to come up with the next great product, the next great service, things like that. But what my unique ability is to see what a product is, what a technology is, what somebody has to offer, and find out how that fits in with the broader market, right? And once you figure
Mm-hmm.
that out, then you can figure out what your go-to market strategy is, and you can figure out all the different pieces and parts that go into that, right? So anybody who's gotten an MBA has probably done what's called value stream mapping.
Yeah, to our listeners, brother Jeff, some of these people are like that's the big term, right? So, and the other thing is like business models. Like these guys are like all they see is what's on YouTube,
Mm-hmm.
right? Because if the experience in business, a lot of these terms might be a bit over your head. So just give us a brief on that really quick.
Yeah, so value stream mapping is, on one end, you have, in the broadest sense of the term, raw materials or ideas or things like that. And on the other end, you have happy, satisfied clients and customers.
Okay, so it's the mapping of getting from A to B,
From,
right?
yeah,
Get your product to a satisfied customer, right?
exactly. And what are all the little pieces and components that take to make that happen? And if you were to visualize this as a timeline, then there's about 500 different branches on that timeline, depending on the complexity of your business. So a really good example is, building an airplane, right? So I live out here in the Seattle area. I've been able to go to the 737 manufacturing plant, and what happens is it's really cool to see it. There's probably YouTube videos out there, but they bring a fuselage in on a train, and that train loads it right onto a track inside of the Boeing facility, and it's just a
Mm-hmm.
giant cylinder. And I think it's within about 30 days, it emerges on the other end on the same track as a completely built airplane. Okay. And so you have to think about what are all the pieces and parts that went into doing that, right? Everything from, yeah, we got to
Mm-hmm.
put wings on, but we also have to attach engines. Those engines have to have all the electronics attached to it. Then you have to have a cockpit. Like
Mm-hmm.
there's a million different things,
Proper inspections, all this. So
everything, right?
basically, you use that example for our listeners because that's a complex situation
Very
that
complex.
there's all sorts of organizations involved in inspections. And my dad's in aerospace too, and it's a nightmare to get parts approved and there's a whole skinny of things. So what you do is solve those problems, right? And create an efficient business, right? What about, but for startups, or what, who's your target? Like,
Yeah.
Lisa and I've run a few businesses, but um, what would be the target person that you could help
Yeah.
the
So
best?
let's just say this startup, this entrepreneur and their team have figured out, and I love the really, whether it's, you can call it deep tech, high tech, those types of companies that have a really unique offering, a technology, a product, or something like that. And they're trying to figure out who the best person is to buy it, right? How do they sell it, right? Coming up with an offer in and of itself is really challenging and time consuming because you,
Oh, I
you
believe
know,
me, dude.
it's not like every business is a perfect little SaaS model, and you go, okay, let's fill out a table and put some check marks on there and charge 97, 197, and 297. That's not the way every
And the
business.
customer looks at it and goes, "Yes, I need this now." Click button.
Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
exactly.
That's not the way most businesses operate. It's the way some of the most lucrative ones operate, but not necessarily, right? And so, excuse me, as an entrepreneur, you need to figure out who your ideal client is, what will they actually spend money on, and then how do you make money with that so that it's profitable? You're not just selling everything at a loss, but it's just because you want to get customers in. And then what do you have to do with your product, your service, your technology, and inside your business to make sure that the product gets delivered, the customer's happy, right? All of that. And then how do you
You're
get
talking about
traffic?
systemizing, right?
Oh,
Is
yeah.
that what I'm hearing? Systemizing everything, right? Protocol, SOP,
Yep.
right? All that kind of stuff. The
That's what that
proper
book's right there
business
is all about.
model.
Absolutely. Yeah. So
Is that
this
what book? What book were you talking about? You just do a book
All
drop right
Hands on
there?
Deck is my second book, and it's all about how U.S. Navy submariners structure, systemize, and optimize for success. Right, everything's a system.
Right. Okay. Cool,
Um,
man.
but
Nice
here's
crossover.
and that's the goal. That's where you want to be eventually. You're absolutely right. But how do you get there? Right, crossing that chasm
Mm-hmm.
is very, very difficult when you are an early stage company. Maybe there's like 4 or 5 people on your team, and you've kind of figured out product market fit, but you haven't really figured out how to scale it yet. Well, this is where we come in and we look at your business and we say, what are the pieces and components that you're going to need to make sure that your business is scalable and to make sure that you're actually, fulfilling on those promises you made to potential customers? Because
Mm-hmm.
there's a couple different ways a business can fail, right? Anyone who's ever read anything about entrepreneurship is going to read that the number one reason businesses fail is because of lack of capital, right? And I think that's such a silly notion because a lack of capital is not a cause. That's an effect, right? If you think about
Amen.
that,
Mm-hmm.
why don't you
Interesting
have the capital?
perspective.
Well, either you started with zero capital and you don't know how to raise any, you didn't have a credit card you could use, you didn't have sales, right? You didn't have customers. And those are the root causes, right? The root cause is I'm not good at raising money. And because I'm not good at raising money, I don't have any capital. Vis-a-vis, we go out of business. Another root
Mm-hmm.
cause is we're not getting sales in. Well, why aren't we getting sales in? Well, maybe we don't have a good offer. Maybe we don't have product market fit. Maybe we're going after the wrong segment of the market altogether, right? So
Mm-hmm.
the number one reason that businesses fail is not because of a lack of capital, but it's that lack of capital is a result of something else they haven't figured out, right? So we generally start on that very front end, which is how are you going to make money, right? And maybe it is I've got to go raise money first because I have R&D, I have production, I'm actually selling something that's
Depending on product, service,
yeah,
SaaS, right? There's all those different business models, right? Yeah.
exactly. So we figured that piece out first. Once you figure that out, like I feel like that is one of the most beneficial things and exercises an entrepreneur, new business owner can go through is
Mm-hmm.
the planning process. You can call it something as simple as business planning, but in reality, you're trying to figure out how do you actually make money. And
Right.
if you haven't nailed that down, as simple as and rudimentary as that sounds, if you don't know what that is, then you're never going to get where you want to
Well, there's a system to systematize things, right? So
go.
that's actually two levels deep. You're talking about knowing a system that makes money and then creating the system within the company to be unique to its version of that company. And then this can be applied to people's lives, right, in general, because if you don't have a plan and you don't have a system of getting from A to B in your life, then you're basically just winging it. right? And then you
Yeah.
wonder like, oh, well, why did I fail at, AKA, like you said, Jeff, business? Why am I not, creating a profit? Or why am I not getting the results I want out of life? Well, I'm just going to keep doing
Mhm.
randomness and hope for some random, lottery type life, right? You've got to have some, my opinion, okay, guys, is the structure is super important. Once you see it work, you go, this might not be everything. Okay, God plays a role. There's all these variables in the world. You can't control everything, but once you see how much you can control, Jeff, wouldn't you agree that that's where you start getting a superpower as an entrepreneur?
Absolutely. One of my favorite books out there is Traction by Gino Wickman, and I
Oh,
reread it,
dang.
re-listen to it maybe once a year. Um, and he hit the nail on the head, and I've talked about this as well, but he hits the nail on the head when you have your visionary and you have your integrator. And the problem that I see most entrepreneurs make is they have one or the other. Okay. Now, you can run a successful business with just an integrator. An integrator would be like your CEO, your president that likes to manage and run the business. And if you're a small business, right? So a chiropractor, a dentist, an attorney, a plumber, HVAC, something like a trades, and you just have, or a retail shop, and you're not necessarily looking to take over the world, so to speak, then
Mm-hmm.
you can be really good at that and run a very successful business. But you have to know thyself. You have to know that you are good at that and you want to be that. On the other hand, if you're the visionary, you're the person that has 10 ideas before breakfast and you want to implement all of them and you're wondering why in the world the team hasn't gotten anything done and you don't have that integrator, you're never going to get anywhere.
No,
And
that's amen,
and I
brother.
think that's an important point that you're making there, Chad, is that you have to have that foundational piece in place first before you start building, right? A really simple analogy is the person that wants to build a home. They don't go out there and just start pouring concrete on the ground and hammering nails, right? They go
Mm-hmm.
to an architect. They have
Mm-hmm.
surveys done on the land to make sure it's actually going to work. And entrepreneurs hate this. They absolutely hate this. They want to just get to work. Like, just
Dude,
show me
you're
where to
so
hammer the
speaking my
nail.
language, man.
But the planning and the strategic thinking that goes into it is so important because, like, I'll just use a chiropractor as an example, right? I ran a functional medicine chiropractic clinic for a few years, and there's 13 others in this little town that we have. 18,000 people. There's 13 chiropractors in this town. And you have to figure out what's going to differentiate you and how are you going to actually make money. Now, a lot of chiropractors will say, well, I do adjustments and I charge insurance. Great. So does every other one in town. How are you going to stand out? What's different about you?
How do you cut through the noise? Yeah.
How do you cut through the noise, right? Because you're marketing and you're
And this
advertising and
is
you're
the
sales.
visionary. This is where the visionary comes in, like
Exactly.
constantly thinking of ways to cut through the noise and be different. Yeah.
Absolutely. And everything else is downstream of this first thing. So for us, it was really simple. We focus on people who are commuting to and from work, which means they're leaving early in the morning and they're coming home late at night, which means you have to be open on both ends of those. That's important. Second, we're looking for that person who is maybe more upscale and they want a little nicer touch. They don't want to just go into the chop shop and get whacked and cracked and kicked out of the door again, right?
We've
They
all
want to
been
go
to
into a
those.
place.
Yeah.
Yeah, they want to go to a place where, okay, I know I'm gonna have to wait around for a little while. So maybe there's tea and there's coffee and there's an ambiance and we also want it to be family friendly. So we gotta have stuff for the kids. So you're maybe not even competing on price, right? You're differentiating your business in a way that you attract your ideal customer, right? So again, how do you make money? And I say that over and over again because the visionary says, I have 100 ways to make money, right? But then you have to really be realistic and go back to, okay, well, what's the one that you can implement this month, right? What's the one
Mm-hmm.
thing that you guys can do? Because if you
Lisa
let
and
the
I go
visionary
through
run the
this on a
show,
regular basis, man. Like you're totally speaking our language for sure.
yeah. I mean, if you have if you have the visionary running the show, what you end up with is a circus full of monkeys and no one filling the seats,
Mm-hmm.
right? You don't really
Yep.
want that. So, what I like to look at is that strategic side of things with entrepreneurs, and I love working with entrepreneurs
So
of all
you
different
consider
types.
yourself the integrator from this perspective, or where do you place yourself? Just
To a
for the
certain
sake of
extent, yeah, I can
yeah.
absolutely get into a business and we can operate it. But generally, what we try to do is we help them see what that plan should be, and then have help their team implement it themselves. And then we have our own agents
Oh,
be
you
on
you
their
just brought
side.
up a good point. Have the team implement it. So this is where my analogy comes in, dude. This is going to really resonate with you, I think. From a contractor standpoint, if you have a good blueprint, Okay, so say you have two crews, five of the best carpenters over here, and five of the best carpenters over here. Only one of them has a blueprint, and the other one has a guy with really big ideas. Who's going to get done quicker?
Yeah.
Right. And then the other thing is, when it comes to teams, the guy who designed that blueprint probably doesn't even have to be on the job, which means other people can help you build
Yep.
your dream or goal. So as a visionary, which I am, I know I need to have a good blueprint for my integrators or my carpenters or my people to go put the thing together. And if my blueprint sucks, okay, they're not going to get anything done. It's not going to be efficient. Even if they're the best at what they do, that if my plan sucks, they're not going to make anything happen. And so that's why it's so important, guys, for our listeners, that you have something put together so your team knows what you're doing. So you're not constantly, oh, go to Chad hurry quick, or go to the owner and ask him real quick what he thinks. And no. Well, you shouldn't be going to the owner for all of that type of stuff. It should already be planned out somewhere. In fact, the mission statement, which I made this mistake, fatal mistake numerous times building businesses, I didn't have a real mission statement. For me, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, Jeff, is a mission statement for a company is a way for an employee to go, I don't need to talk to anyone. I know our mission. I'll answer the question for the customer.
It's a great start. Absolutely.
Right.
I think you also have to build in your core values on that one, because if you have a great mission statement, that's one thing. But if you're hiring,
so core values would be, thank you for bringing that up
they
too,
don't have the
man.
right core values to align with that. Like, so in your case, if the mission statement is this, and the mission statement is we solve the problem no matter what, how big or how small, for example, right?
Mm-hmm.
Well, that's naturally going to attract the right team. And hopefully you have the right people that understand that mission. Hey, I will help solve this problem no matter how big or how small. But on the other hand, if you have core values that don't align with that mission statement, you say, okay, yeah, our core value is that we just, we have fun, right? The most important thing in our business,
not going to line up. Yeah.
Well,
good point, man.
Having
really
fun
good
and getting
point.
the problem solved is not always in alignment, right? Sometimes solving the problem is the most frustrating, tiresome thing you could possibly do, but it needs to get done. So I agree that having a really strong mission statement is important. Having those core values is vitally important as well.
It's almost the same thing, and maybe I misquoted, right? Because that's what I meant in a sense, right? I just the employees in your team have to know where you're coming from, but that has to be a fundamental part already done. You can't just make that up as you go and change your mind. This customer gets this treatment, that customer gets this treatment. No. Everyone gets this treatment that we've created that's in alignment, right? There's a reason for that.
Yeah, absolutely.
So
absolutely,
that's powerful, Jeff. That's really, really powerful. If that's all you do, that's a pretty big play, right? Is it not?
It's really huge, right? And I hate to say it, but the only people that are going to not see that as valuable and instrumental are the people that have never failed, right? And there's very few entrepreneurs who have never failed. I haven't met any yet. Right.
Yeah.
So
we're gonna find one, brother. I bet there's people who say that online though. And so with Jeff saying that too, guys, like a lot of these entrepreneurs that haven't failed are on their first time up. They just started in the entrepreneur world. Boom, they caught a good break. They got a long way to go to really start seeing the landscape of a career in entrepreneurs and business and I'm not saying that there's people that don't make it all the way to the top on the first try, but we've heard all the underdog stories, man, online.
Well,
but just
you think about the folks, who are the entrepreneurs that people idolize, right? You look at the Elon Musk or the Jeff Bezos or the Steve Jobs and these folks. Guess what? Massive setbacks in each one of those people's lives, right? They did they did not emerge that shining star without walking through the muck a lot and falling down in face first, right? And there's so many different like Harvard Business Review case studies about failure to launch even inside of these successful businesses. And so when I talk about a failure, I'm talking about somebody that is like, maybe they haven't had to go all the way back down to ground zero like I did, but they've had to shut down something, whether it's a division, whether it's a team, whether it's an idea, and they have to take their lickings, right? And those are the best learning opportunities, right? As long as you're willing to sit back and reflect on what went wrong.
Yeah. Yeah, that's powerful, man. So you wrote 2 books, Jeff. One's about the nuts and bolts of the systems and structures that you're talking about, right? And then what's the other one? Is that Would you write that one after?
No, I wrote that one before. So my first foray, if you will, into trying to be in business, I was mentioning the real estate thing, right? And to do real estate properly, I know a lot of people say, okay, no money down, you can go do that. Well, that's actually a lot harder than a lot of people make it out to be. To find those needle in a haystack deals where you're going to make money
Mm-hmm.
without having to come to the table with any money at all, that's kind of hard. So what I
Well, it
learned early
happens, but
on,
you're so right. It's a needle in the haystack. Yeah.
yeah. And so what I learned is like, wouldn't it be great if I could, because I was losing out deals left and right because I didn't have any money. Not only didn't have any money, but at the time also didn't have any experience, didn't have any friends, didn't have anybody that could like come to the table and save me, right? So my business partner and I at the time said, listen, there's all this money in retirement plans, and there's this cool little loophole inside of the IRS that allows you to invest your IRA or your 401k into alternative investments. Cool, let's go start teaching that to people, and let's go raise money from retirement plans. And so we started doing that, and we actually got to be a lot more successful by being able to bring people's self-directed IRA or self-directed 401k and put that money into deals. And so that, knowing marketing, I said, all right, let's write a book about this. Let's do interviews. Let's do podcasts, and let's use that as our lead generation. And so that book alone, was responsible for me raising millions and millions of dollars because people saw me as the expert who understood how to use a retirement plan to raise money. And that was a
Mm-hmm.
little over 12 years ago now, I think.
Yeah. Did that law change? Did something change in that space, or is that still you can still move
So
that money? Because
there's
I
been a
know.
lot of changes in that space. So
Yeah.
self-directed IRAs have been around for quite a while. It's just that most people didn't know about that. Now they've become, I'd say, somewhat ubiquitous. What changes over time is how and where you use the money. So like the 401ks, those have been around for a long time as well, right? 1973 was an ERISA, and 1974 ERISA came out, got rid of defined benefit plans, went to defined contribution, gave us this whole thing that could happen. But these little loopholes, you had to use them the right way, just like anything else in the Internal Revenue Code.
Yeah.
If you know how to use them, then they're really powerful. If you don't, you can
Yeah,
end up
because
in a lot of
during
trouble.
Corona, guys, you guys might have heard this. Some of my listeners, during the whole the shutdown and all that stuff went down, they actually made a big announcement that you could start using these. I don't even know if it was self-directed. I just remember it being some change, and they literally changed it based on the emergency. Okay, so now you can use this directly for real estate specifically. I don't remember exactly on that. You guys can comment below, but yeah, that is an interesting take on that. So, how much real estate are you doing now, Jeff?
So we actually work with funds now, and the funds
Okay.
that we're working with have about $400 million under management. And so what we
Mm-hmm.
do is we work with the operators. What I found, going back to this thing earlier, I even though I can be the operator inside of a business, it's not the thing I love doing.
Mm-hmm.
What I really like is finding that strategic fit for a business and working with a CEO or a fund manager or operator. So we work with family offices and real estate funds and private equity funds. And my job is to kind of help build the team and build the structure with the vision. And then we have our teams kind of help implement that.
Okay, cool. So I got a project I'm working on. It is in the real estate space, though. It's rescue home offers, which is specifically working with direct to homeowner, but coaching program. But what level, what's your target market? Like who are you targeting for these types of like these funding, right? Do you have to have a certain amount of money, or do you just have to have the wherewithal to want to do that thing?
Yeah. So if you want to launch your own fund, you don't need to have any money. You can actually launch an entire fund on your own and get that up and running pretty easily. The hard part is raising the money, right? So what we do and what we become specialists at is finding money, right? It's
Okay.
everywhere, right? There's like $3.7 trillion in dry powder alone right now, which for those of you who don't know what that means, that's the money that is sitting on the sidelines, basically earning 1% or less, doing absolutely
Mm-hmm.
nothing for these VCs and private equity funds because they can't find the deals to put the money into.
I was just telling my students the other day. I said, "You have no idea. If let's say you had $2 million, you don't know how hard it is to lend that out to
Mm-hmm.
try to get a return. It can be challenging. Am I wrong about that,
Oh no,
Jeff?
you're 100% right, right?
Yeah.
Because here's the paradox when it comes to capital raising. There's a lot of people looking for money, and there's never going to be a shortage of people looking for money. We get 10 to 20 new applications a day on our website for people looking for money. The problem is that those people that are looking for money don't know what money is looking for. Okay. And when I say that, I mean,
Wow. Say that again, dude. I want you to say it loud and proud.
right. So
That was a killer quote, man.
the people who are looking for money the most, who don't have any, don't know what money is looking for. And that's
Yeah,
why there's
that's
always this
powerful.
mismatch, and they cannot figure out why can't people won't invest in them.
Mm-hmm.
And it's it's not like there's one simple answer, right? It's actually more of a metaphysical thing than it is anything else, right? I don't want to go too woo woo on people here,
All right.
but the fact is that if you are struggling right now to raise money, whether that's for a real estate deal, whether it's for a business deal, whether it's for a project, doesn't really matter. It's because you are fundamentally doing something to repel money away from you. And it's probably not the deal, right? It may not be the business, the startup, the technology, the idea, the product, right? It has a lot more to do with personalities, characteristics, how you're doing things on a daily basis, the things you're saying or not saying, the people that you're attracting into your life, right? Like I'll give you a really good example. Um, I've been involved in over $1 billion worth of capital raising and investments, and I've been in the room when investors that are ready to write a $20 million check will not do it simply because one of the people that's part of the team that they're looking at investing in is what they would call a kamikaze, right? Somebody who's going to go down and tank the whole thing and take the entire business with them. And so the conversation literally went to the founder and the CEO that said, listen, we like everything about your business. We like the deal. We'd love to work with you, but there's a caveat. You can't have that person on your team. And
Wow. This is
the
good.
entrepreneur walked
This is
away.
good information for our
Yeah,
listeners. So when that's why you say the metaphysical and that's why you say the woo woo stuff, because there's a lot of nuances is what you're saying, right?
yeah.
Then some of them are not like surface level, and there's no real rules. It's like literally in the moment, right? But you have to, there is a way to navigate that. Is that also what you're saying,
Yes,
Jeff?
absolutely. Right. So let's just, if we were to break this down and we're talking to somebody who's trying to raise money, the normal thought process is, man, I need to raise money. I need this money today. This money needs to show up. They wake up stressed out about it. They're wondering where it's going to come from. They are anxious. They're depressed. They're physically and visibly upset, right? And they're having all these things that are going on in their life. And then all of a sudden they have to flip a switch and get on a phone with a potential investor or show up at a meeting and somehow win them over. Now, I
Mm-hmm.
don't know about you, but have you ever tried to go and make amends with anyone or convince somebody to do something when you're in a really bad mood, right?
Right.
And
You got to be, yeah, it's tough, man.
it's really really hard. And if you can't, I mean, physically, you cannot do that. You can't just change your energy state on a dime. Most people can't, I should say. There's all these studies about Buddhist monks and these people that can actually go in and change their frequency, if you will, um,
Mm-hmm.
because they've been trained to do it. Most people are not. And if you are not trained to do that, you don't know how to compartmentalize these fears, these
Yeah, here it
frustrations.
comes out. We want some answers,
Yeah,
Jeff. We need to know how to, these people are looking for the secret right here, man. What do you
the
got for
secret,
them?
I mean, the real secret, if you want to go down this, is just belief, right? If
Mm-hmm.
you truly believe that you are capable of doing this thing, like not just like giving it lip service and writing it down as a, an affirmation every single day, I can do this, I can do this, I can do this, but truly believe that you can do this, then there's nothing that's going to stop you, because that belief in and of itself will help you manifest the things in your life that will make it come true, right?
Amen.
And I can't. So going back to, how did I recover from losing millions and millions of dollars, right? It's because I truly believe that no matter what, I'm going to succeed, and no one's going to stop me. Not even losing all of my business accounts and everything. Like, it's not going to stop me. I will find a way
Mm-hmm.
to succeed.
Well, that's not your idea of success. Your idea of success is playing the game and doing it and like learning and growing,
A big part of it, yeah,
and you already knew that was part of the journey. You already knew that was
yeah.
going to happen. It's not like you said with your marriage, you're like, yeah, I saw it coming, like just these things, you just see them and you're like, yeah, it's coming. It's going to happen. We're going to get through it.
Mhm.
We're going to forge through all this types of stuff. Right. So, at least from the mindset perspective, I know you're like an analytical type. What's your feedback on that? Like, do you believe in that too? Because I know she doesn't always align with me on the whole,
Oh,
I'm a
like
little woo woo for her.
on believing in yourself that you'll succeed, and is that
Well,
what you're
yeah,
asking?
like that energy that he's talking about.
Oh yeah, 100%
I
for
hope so.
sure.
It's written. It's right above you. So
Yes, exactly. Yep,
Well,
that says
we
it all.
do. Yeah, between the three of us here in the fence post, Lisa and I are. You've went through so many dynamics. It really shines through you, Jeff. I'll tell you that right now, man. Your confidence, your abilities, and you're definitely a genuine guy. And I love, everything that you shared with us today. But I want to make sure we touch on some of the really important things, just for the listeners. Obviously, you guys are here to, kind of maybe be motivated, and maybe get some, golden nuggets from Jeff and the team today. But Jeff, how can someone find you, like, to have a conversation with you? Do you do social media? Like, if they wanted to learn more about you,
yeah. So
right?
I have my team do my social media for us because I can't stand it personally. It's a time
Okay.
vampire. But I'm out there all the time. And so there's two places people can go right now: angelinvestorsnetwork.com if you're a startup and you're
Okay.
looking to raise money, or if you're an investor and you're looking to come to our events and invest in companies, then that's one place. Or if you're a
Okay.
company
So
that,
both sides of the spectrum there,
yep,
money and people looking for money. Okay,
yep. And
cool.
those are the earlier stage companies that are looking to get going. And then for the companies that have already been capitalized and they're just looking to scale up, demg.io is our agency. And that's where we do a lot of the strategic work with them and we figure out what they need as far as scalability.
DEIO.
DEMG.
demg.io. So Digital Evolution Marketing Group.
Okay, cool.
And I'll make
Perfect,
sure you guys
man.
have all
So
that.
yeah, thank you very, very much on that, man. Okay, so we've touched on that, and then so at these meetings, let's dive into this. I'm interested a little bit, obviously, in maybe a couple different things. You got my mind spinning, like on a lot of different levels here. As far as like funding businesses, is there some businesses that are easier to fund? How does what give us an idea of what that might look like? I'm with the last guest we had was all into franchises, had no idea this space at all, never done
Mhm.
a business, or maybe buying a business. So say I have another
Mhm.
business, they want, a couple $1,000,000 for it. Do I come to this organization and say, hey, I'd like to buy this other business? And how to
Yeah.
walk me through a couple scenarios there.
So, first, to answer your question, yes, some businesses are much easier to fund than others. And make it really simple. The businesses that are easier to fund are the ones that are growing, that are profitable. That's like, if you have
Mm-hmm.
a growing and profitable business, then you won't have any shortage of people that either want to invest in you or acquire you. On the flip side of that, I love acquiring cash flowing businesses. Right? That's actually a really big
Mm-hmm.
focus of ours for next year with our
Yeah,
club.
that's ours too. That's why I asked that question. So yeah,
Yeah.
let's play around with that for a little bit.
So whenever you acquire a business, there's a lot of things you're looking for. The first one, biggest and most important thing, as far as I'm concerned, that you're looking for is that the business is not focused on one person, right? If the CEO is the person holding all the things together and they're the ones trying to sell it and you buy the business and then they leave, then that leaves in a massive
Just
gaping
implodes.
hole
Yeah.
and somebody else has to fill
Mm-hmm.
that, right? So whenever you're looking to acquire a business, you're looking to make sure that it's an actual business. It's not somebody is self-employed and calls it a business, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, and a lot of the times, I love this is that you look at these P&Ls from companies and they have all this SDE, seller discretionary earnings, and add backs. They're like, yeah, well, of course our business is profitable because look at all this money we can put back in that the founder, the owner, the CEO took out on their own, and that's just their money, right? It's like, well, no, that's not
Mm-hmm.
really a profitable business then because that was actually your salary, right? And if we
Mm-hmm.
actually looked at it that way, then I need to have a salaried person at that level to be able to afford,
Right.
buying this
With
business at the level you're asking
which
for.
that is a high. Those are small percentages of people. Jeff,
Mhm.
am I wrong about that? I mean,
They will actually take
literally
money
only
out,
I think
or
10 or 14. Yeah, 10 or 14% of the entire U.S. population. I can't remember exactly. Even makes over 100K. Right. And if you're talking about running some establishment that's going to pay multiple employees, they're going to want more than 100K.
oh yeah,
right? So you're already looking at this tiny proportion of people that has to fill this gap
Yep.
or this hole. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So, you're looking for it. I wouldn't say the needle in a haystack necessarily, because there's business brokers out there, just like there's real estate agents out there that'll list homes and they'll list businesses. So you can find them.
Mm-hmm.
There's no doubt about it. But just like every startup, like I said, we get 10 to 20 a day that are coming to us looking for funding. What you're looking for is the reasons the deal won't work, right? And the biggest challenge is when you're in this space, whether it's buying businesses, buying real estate, investing in companies, is you get optimistic and you just want to make a deal. The reason
Yeah.
that Berkshire Hathaway and Warren Buffett are so successful is they have a very, very set criteria of what and how they will invest, and they take all emotion out of it. And if it doesn't fit their really well defined parameters, they won't do it, right? No matter how much
Mm-hmm.
somebody else is in love with the deal, they just won't do it. And you have to do the same thing when it comes to your own personal money or your
We call
investment
this
money.
the objective thought process of the entrepreneur,
Mhm.
right? So that's all part of that woo-woo stuff too, guys. Being objective is a big part of being in business. You can't go in all emotional and like
Yeah.
connected, and that just it could destroy you. Is it cool and you feel good about running a good business? Yeah, but you also need to know and understand objective thought processes, which is definitely down that same vein. So these businesses that if I brought you a business, right, and then or whoever brought you a business that they wanted to buy instead of starting up, right? You said that is sort of better because you want to see some
Oh, yeah.
tangible
So
results
the way that
in
we
there, and then
work with our investor membership is we have a club. We call it the Mastermind Investment Club. And these are people
mm-hmm,
that come together, they pay their annual fee. We go to events. We just got done doing an event in Austin a couple weeks ago. And we look at deals and then we syndicate the deals or we pass on them. And so our
mm-hmm,
members can bring us deals in if they want to have us invest in a company. And then we have valuation software that we put that company through and we figure out if the valuation that we've come up with is the same that the person's trying to sell at. And so we go through that whole process, yeah. And then if it's a good fit,
and
we
this
move
is
forward.
this is your baby now. This is the project you're working on, and this is where you do most of your stuff outside of the systems and
Yeah.
structures that you mentioned before,
Yeah,
right?
our goal is global domination with Angel Investors Network. So we're going to have chapters
Yeah.
all over the world. We're building out our U.S. base first. We have folks that are looking at the Middle East, and then our goal is to build out this ecosystem where companies can come to look for funding and exits as well, and investors can come to look at deals. So real estate, startups, and private equity.
Okay. Like a marketplace
Exactly.
for all this type of stuff. Yeah, that's
Yep.
great, man. Good for you guys. Cool. Super powerful, man. Dude, you are out of this world. Love having you as a guest. I loved your quote earlier about that, like that people need to understand what the money's looking for. So I want to just make that our big takeaway today for sure, because even as an individual, guys, and being an entrepreneur, you got to have some skill sets that the marketplace wants to see. You have to have a product that the marketplace wants, and there's a learning curve there. I mean, Lisa and I've seen it a few times. We've even had sit downs where we're like, what do we get ourselves into? Like, do we even know what's going on at all? I mean, and you ask that question all the time as an entrepreneur. So don't think that's not going to happen to you guys, but you really do that because the world is big and massive, right? It's as far as you want to go. Am I right, Jeff? Like you can just keep going and growing. There's no really end. Even if you hit to where you're like the richest guy in the world, there's still nowhere. You can still keep going,
Yep. You just pull,
right? You
pull
can
one out
still
of
grow
Elon
past
Musk
that.
playbooks and go to Mars, right? Call it good.
Yeah, exactly, right? Like you can keep on going. So guys, I'm going to use this as a takeaway. Just keep on going and growing. All right, because becoming an entrepreneur is a space for you as an individual, as a human being, to grow yourself and use that value to maybe grow your community, but it'll be a great experience for you. So hopefully that's why you're here, and that's what we've motivated you to do. But that's a wrap on today's episode of Fire Your Boss Fridays. The incredible Jeff Barnes in the house. Thank you for sharing all this stuff, man, and truly embodying the spirit of our show. From Lisa, Jeff, and I, we want you guys all to remember that life is not just about that destination, right? Like we said earlier, it's the journey, just being the entrepreneur, just be and embody it. Firing your boss is just a little thing that you do, but you embody that energy of like moving into this new version of yourself. And as Jeff showed us earlier, stealing your life back from that mundane, firing your boss. Go out there, live like you stole it, And the most precious thing in life, remember, what you're stealing is your own life back from all the mundane and all the, you're fulfilling someone else's dream. Go get it for yourself, guys, and make every moment count. Thank you so much, Jeff, again. And we did have some fun here, even though you said you can't just have fun all the time and it won't line up. But we did have some fun here today. So see y'all next Friday. Later on, say bye, guys.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. Thanks for having me.